Well, Nathaniel, now that we decided to go ahead and box this onto the back because this lower crossmember being rusted out so bad right there, I had one long piece of this left over and two little short pieces, and that's going to be about exactly enough to go ahead and so we won't have to order any more material. We'll just run it on through here and stop right there. So, all right, I'm going to show you what this crossmember mount looks like. You can see it's completely gone back there and all the way through and terribly rusted. So I'm gonna put a bolster right through there. This worked out real good. I had this long piece left over. I just cut it perfectly half in two. Then I had two little short pieces left over, and that finished this out real nice. Got us past where it was welded. All right, Nathaniel, you can see how nice and strong these frame rails are looking, and I was able to use your leftover pieces so we didn't have to buy any more pieces. Made exact duplicates of them while I was making it so that it fit right in here on the other side just as nice. And I've got your engine setting up here. I just pulled it out and I want to show you how long that thing looks. And I had it in the frame rails here, and I've pulled it out, flipped this back upside down. While I had it in place, I went ahead and drilled an index and located this piece I'm going to make for your cross member, and I tack welded it in place in the exact location that centers your engine. Then I'm going to start drill me a couple of holes. I've got a little window right here between these two frame rails internally that I can make me a plate and have a weld-in nut inside there, and you'll have two bolts hold that in place, and I'll box all this in and then make a relief for your drive shaft. All right, now that it's still intact in place, and that's the location where the engine was completely bolted in and sitting on its own weight, I was able to index and drill these 1/2 inch, and then index and drill them 1/2 inch, and then it's in the exact location that it needs to be. So now I'm going to work on this little plate here. I'm going to cut it to fit inside the frame rail this long. Have a weld-on nut on the back of it, then install it inside the frame rail, plug weld it in the center, and then you'll have weld-in nuts in there for forever. Make this thing a lot easier to take on and off. Got your weld-in plates fabricated, and it's just a 1/4 inch plate with two nuts welded on it. And then I'm going to use the hole that I put in there to bound them with and slip that up in there. And I've got this one up in place, and I'm going to plug weld it right like that. So if anything ever need to take that out, all you can do is drill out them plug welds and take it out and fix it, but you'll never have to do that. And then I'll take these bolts out, and then we'll have weld-in bungs for the cross member to make. All right, I fabricated you some little striking plates on here because the landing on this frame was not exactly true. It starts to go uphill right here, so that's going to flatten that out. And then I've got your weld-in stud or nuts inside there, so that's going to be very handy when you ever have to service this cross member. All right, now I got it bolted in place, those 1/2 inch bolts, and that looks very nice, very strong. So now I'll come back in here, I end up cutting the end of this off and then rounding that a little bit and then plating all that and put me some spacers in there so where we can bolt your transmission mount in place. And then I've got a notch out for the drive shaft area. And that's what I'm fixing to do now. Flip this thing over, set the motor back in place, and mark for the front drive shaft. Now I've got your motor back in place, and it went in here absolutely beautifully, exactly in line and straight, and this bolted in place. So now I've got to do something about your front drive shaft. Your front drive shaft angle is going to make it where it's going to hit the end of this cross member. So I'm going to go in here and cut this out. I've got it bolted. It's another reason why I put them plates in there and bolted that in so that I can cut this in two in the middle, and they'll stay pretty much straight where they were. I may have to do a little bit of supporting on them, but not much. And then I'm going to go in here and form a piece of radius 3/16 plate, and then I'll come in there and box the whole thing, and this will be nice and done. So I took in and put a block under your transmission and set it the exact height where it's going to set, and I got all the stress out of this cross member, and then I've cut this cross member out, and this is what I'm going to do with your front drive shaft. Going to come right down and kind of halfway through that cross member. So I fabricated this piece, just did a bunch of little breaks there and measured it out, made it 6 inches wide, and I will insert that in there, and then that'll give us a nice little tunnel for the front drive shaft. All right, here's what it's looking like. I had to pull the motor and transmission back out, and I've got it bolted in there, and that'll help hold it kind of like a jig, and then work my welds around. And now I'm going to build a bottom and plate and box all that in. I've got it cut and ground and getting it ready for my overlay because I'm gonna box all this in. I went to my local hardware store and bought some spacers because this has a stud that comes out, so I'm gonna have that housed in there, and then you'll be able to access that right through there because this is gonna be plated. Then I've got spacers I'll have on the ends right there that will be in the boxing, so that these will go through both pieces of the box. Be extremely strong. I've already pickled inside here so we don't give any rust or contaminants inside there. And then I've already got this piece made that'll go over here. Once I get the boxing done, then I'll box in this. So this is an extremely nice looking cross member that will bolt right on there and give this thing lots of support. Now this thing's really starting to take shape. I've got my access holes here. This is where you're going to be able to get to the studs on the motor mount or transmission mount. And then those are going to be my bolt ends for the cross member. And then once I get all that welded in place, then I'll overlay this, weld this in place. And this will be extremely strong, and it needs to be extremely strong because that engine transmission is so heavy. And the motor mounts are so far up front that all the weight of the back of the engine and transmission and transfer case that's hanging out here is going to be just bouncing and bouncing. And then I'm going to come in here and I'll put this in there and then box this in as well. So let's get this thing welded up. Alright, here she is welded and roughed in. I've still got to do a plate on both sides of the tunnel for the drive shaft. And you can see how the ends are, and I mean that's very nice. Very strong, very serviceable. There she is in place, and how nice is that? Outstanding. And then when I get your front end in place, I can always notch down a little bit more if I need a little bit more for the lift of how much lift we have right there. But that is sweet.